Okay, Jamie, are we recording now? Okay, everybody. Thank you, Jamie. We're recording. We'll start the meeting right now. We have a quick announcement before we get to the USDA portion. Congress did fail to extend the child nutrition waivers. So as of June 30th, 2022, so just a few months from now, USDA will no longer have the authority to provide higher reimbursement rates or allow schools to serve free meals to all students. Those are going away. For now, it appears that school operations will return to normal with the collection of free and reduced application and all the duties associated with them in the upcoming year. One thing that will be going out, if you desire, you could collect free and reduced applications now to for this year to allow children to have the 30-day carryover for next year, because we don't have any guidance from USDA right now on 30-day carryover. That does mean that they would fill out an application now and have to fill one out in the new school year. However, that option is available to you. So I just want to make it very clear, there's been a lot of misunderstanding going on throughout the state. There is currently no plan to have free meals for all students in Idaho next year. And with that, sorry, I'm admitting to more people. With that, I will turn it over to USDA for a listening session on the upcoming changes in the meal pattern. So we will give it away. We will let USDA take the meeting over for now. And I will welcome Melissa Ditano and Christy Hubbard from our Western Region office to kick it off. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynda, for the warm welcome. Good morning, everybody. My name is Christy Hubbard. I'm a nutritionist for USDA Food and Nutrition Service out of the Western Regional Office. I have with me here today Melissa Ditano, who's also a nutritionist. She's going to serve as our note taker, and Jackie Brown, who's helping me keep the time. But as Lynda said, we're joining your call today to hear your feedback and recommendations on long-term standards for school meals. But before we do that, we really want to pause and thank you for your hard work and dedication to provide school meals, particularly over the last several years. We know that school meals are so important to children's health and well-being. A study published last year in the Journal of the American Medical Association found that school meals are the healthiest meals that kids receive on a given day. So we just really want to emphasize how important your work is, how it truly makes a difference in the lives of children and their families, and just really extend a warm, heartfelt thank you to all of you, particularly all the hard work over the last couple of years during the pandemic. And at the same time, we really want to thank our state agency partners here at the Idaho State Department of Education. They have also really worked tirelessly again particularly over the last several years, navigating all of the changes to the child nutrition programs, the waivers, keeping you up to date on all the changes and latest guidance. So another heartfelt thank you to our Idaho state partners. Second, we just also want to pause and acknowledge that the circumstances facing school meal professionals remain challenging. And so we just want you to know that we're really committed to working in partnership with you and our state agency partners here in Idaho to support the successful operation of our school meals programs now and in the future. So a little bit of a background on the meal standards. So I think most of you are aware that back in February, USDA issued what's technically a final rule, but with comments, and those would the final rule set transitional standards for whole grains, milk, and sodium in the child nutrition programs. We think of it at USDA as a bridge rule. It's going to take effect starting in July, and we plan for it to be in place for 2 school years. This is the first step in a longer process. So the bridge rule will hopefully provide the time and direction in the short term as we transition from pandemic operations. The second step in the process is going to be a new proposed rule, which will update the meal standards in the long term. So we plan to publish that proposed rule for comment in the fall of 2022, so not that far from now. And the plan is to finalize this rule in time for it to take effect for school year 24-25. The proposed rule is going to address long-term standards for milk, whole grains, and sodium, and potentially other changes that would reflect updates to the dietary guidelines over the last decade. So your input today is really going to help to inform this proposed rule, which is going to focus on long-term standards that are currently under development. So the way we're going to operate our listening session today with you, we're going to cover 9 topic areas. So I'll present the questions, and we'll have up to about 6 minutes for you to respond to the questions. There's a couple ways that you can respond. So you can raise your hand and we'll call on you. I'm probably going to rely a little bit, at least in the beginning, on Lynda and her team to help me call on folks. You can also post responses in the chat. And so I'll be kind of looking, if you see my head moving, I have 2 screens. So I'll be kind of looking back and forth at the chat and kind of reading, trying to summarize some of the posts and responses. One favor I have to ask you, I don't know if you've done this before, but it would be helpful for us since we're taking notes. You can change your name in Zoom, how it shows up. If you hover over your the little box with your name, or if you have your camera on, you hover over it, there's 3 dots. And I think if you either right or left click on it, you'll see, and you see a drop down with a rename. So I renamed, I put Christy Hubbard, USDA FNS WRO. If you know how to do that and you want to change your name to include your district affiliation, that would be really helpful. Otherwise, when we call on you, if you don't mind saying kind of your name and your district affiliation before you answer, that will also help us. But we'll remind you as we go along. We don't want anyone to feel nervous about this. Lynda, have you all done that before, like renaming in Zoom? I'm not looking to see if people are able to do it.
I have not, but we pretty much know most people, so
Okay.
we could help you with that.
Okay, thank you. All right. And a couple of notes too, we truly mean for this to be a listening session. So we're really going to be primarily in a listening mode. We'll reflect back and might have some prompts or encourage you to answer some of those prompts, but really this time is for you. And so it's important for us to hear your responses and ideas and how these particular questions are landing for you. And so with that, I believe that we're ready to start with our first question. Unless, Lynda, is there anything else that you want me to cover before we get started?
Nope, go right ahead.
Okay, wonderful. All right. So the first question, what elements of the school breakfast and school lunch meal patterns have you had the most success implementing? Are there any elements that have caused significant challenges? And if so, what's difficult about it? For example, student acceptance, operational challenges. Okay, I see Christy. Would you like to go?
Can you hear my voice?
Yes, we can.
Great. I don't want to dominate the conversation. We have a lot to say today. We're grateful that you're here listening. And we've had success in implementing the patterns and as it's laid out. So we have a few challenges. I'll be very specific. The cup of fruit requirement at breakfast, when we do serve versus offer versus serve, is very challenging. It's a lot of fruit. We want to implement this in our elementary grade group. So a cup of fruit or 2 pieces of fruit for a small child is too much food, and we're getting too much return. So we're having to default to offer versus serve. And that puts a lot of burden on teachers to help support that breakfast in the classroom model. And I think it would be really beneficial I think it would be fine for kids and beneficial for teachers if we could go to a serve model in that situation. Another issue we have is with milk choice. We obviously see the value in offering choice of milk. We want kids to drink milk. We have difficulty when all of a sudden we're running into delivery issues, or we're going to run out of a second choice. We don't want to shut down a line or meal services. And we scramble, we have dairy scrambling. We'd like the opportunity to flex when we run out of a second choice instead of it being an all hands on deck emergency. And it should be very much the exception to the rule, a couple times a year exception. The only other difficulty we have are with grade groups, the way our school system is set up. We have a K through 6, then 7 through 9 junior high, then a 10 through 12 high school. So the overlap is really tight for nutrient calories for us, and it makes menu planning especially challenging. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Christy. We appreciate those comments.
Hey, Christy, by the way, Christy is with Boise School District.
Boise, okay, thank you. And I see another hand. Katie Rogers, would you like to go?
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for listening to all of our comments. It's really valued from our positions. I wanted to piggyback on what Christy had to say with the offer versus serve. And one point that I had noticed, we had kids up to 3rd grade who have never had offer versus serve as an option due to the COVID waivers. Because we were doing meals in the classroom, we had kids that haven't even been through the cafeteria. So they didn't know, and then teachers didn't know the standards of offer versus serve. So it was very difficult for us to train 3 to 4 classes where usually we have kindergarten or 1st grade. So that's an added challenge. But now that we kind of got our wheels turning with offer versus serve, it's definitely appreciated through the grade levels, because if they don't like something, they have options, and it does promote that choice. My second point that I wanted to make was just the exposure that kids have to the requirements USDA has as far as grains and sodiums and stuff is not the same between schools and home. So really the only place that kids are getting exposed to whole grains and extremely low sodium foods would be at school. And it makes it very difficult for us to serve spaghetti, for example. You know, whole grain spaghetti, quite frankly, is not the best. You have to definitely dress it up to make it appealing. And it's difficult to get kids to enjoy that when their only exposure is at school, because I don't know a ton of moms out there, moms or dads, that feed whole grain spaghetti, for example, at home. So yeah, just the exposure. And when I was at an SNA conference, there was a USDA lady there that had taken some feedback. And one of the ladies stood up and said, you know, if we have these requirements at school, why don't we have these requirements with SNAP? I'm not going to go any further into that, but that's just a great talking point that I thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Appreciate that. And a couple of your comments, hold on to them. You can elaborate. We have some other questions about some like specific products and acceptability. So I think some of your comments will come into play there. I think we have one more
Wait.
minute. Oh, Lynda.
Hey, Christy,
Uh-huh.
we have a few comments or whatever in the chat.
In the
So
chat.
Dawn Stone from Pocatello said, for us, milk has not been a problem and neither has the grains. The sodium has been a problem, however. Meeting the low sodium and being able to have flavor acceptance is an issue. We'd like to have a little higher sodium guidelines. And then Michelle Eggers from Nampa. We have had success implementing the meal pattern. We feel fruit portion is too high for K-5 for breakfast in the classroom. Like Boise, we have a lot of returns on the fruit, which does lead to waste. And then Dawn Stone said from Pocatello, I agree with Katie. Thank you. She's correct. Home and school are completely different. And Jody Hoff from Lewiston School District said most successful with whole grain. Sodium standards is the most difficult due to student acceptance. Sodium also more difficult to implement in the breakfast program. And then Jennifer Brown, whoop, I lost, with District 121, and I'm going to have to look up what 121 is, sorry. We have similar problems like Katie. Kids' home foods are loaded with sodium and preservatives, so their taste buds are deadened and they feel our food is flavorless. And Lisa Ward from West Jefferson School District said, I can honestly say that whole grain pasta is not accepted well. The 100% juice is good. Those are the comments so far.
Thank you, Lynda, for helping me out with those, and for everybody who provided comments. So that was I think that was a good warm up, because we have more questions that get into ask some more detail about some of the things that you all have mentioned. So let's move, or Lynda, are we ready to move on?
Sorry, we're not ready to move on. Okay, Audrey Gray from Murtaugh School District. My students have had a hard time with the whole grain and low sodium. It has also been a challenge for me to get 2 types of milk, skim and 1%. By the way, 121 is Camas County, for your notes. Okay. Camas County School District. And Heather Plain in Bonneville said, we switched from USDA pasta to commercial pasta and have had better luck with the whole grain. Now you may go to the next slide.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, thanks for your participation, everyone. We really, these are very rich comments and we appreciate it. So a little more specificity here with this question. In terms of the food products you serve in the programs, and which products have you seen industry make progress related to increasing whole grains and reducing sodium? I think a little bit of this started to show up in your comments already in the chat, but you're definitely welcome to elaborate, or let me get my participant. Would anyone like to provide a verbal comment on this one?
The comments are starting to flow for this one. So Jeff Halen, Blaine County, the problem with USDA pasta is that it's too dense and the mouthfeel is odd for kids. I think that might be the previous one. Right. But Barbara Alsop at New Plymouth said the sodium limit has been an issue in their district. And Bobby Coleman at Le Pondere School District, meeting sodium guidelines is extremely difficult for us, especially the last couple of years with supply chain disruptions and decrease in overall available school products, limiting our resources. Whole grain tortillas, rice, and pasta are refused by our students.
Thank you for those. And I see, it looks like Katie, you have your hand up to provide a verbal comment. Go ahead, Katie.
I am always happy to talk. And I encourage anybody else too. It's not that scary. I'll say that the commodity further processed chicken that we get through Tyson is actually very well accepted. We do the chicken strips a little bit more than the chicken nuggets, but our younger kids really like the chicken nuggets. And what else do we get? Oh, I think in the popcorn chicken, the dark meat popcorn chicken, they really like those. But that's kind of it. It's really just those further processed items that are widely accepted.
Thank you, Katie. I'm looking to see if there's oh, Becky, go ahead.
Hi there, my name's Becky Elmore. I'm up here in Post Falls, Northern Idaho region. I just wanted to say that the context that we have communicated with from our industry partners have noted that this ensuing sodium restriction that we're looking at for the school year 23-24 is problematic from the standpoint of, some of their product lines are just not going to be, they're not going to be able to represent those product lines and maintain at a level that will work within those new guidelines. So we may be seeing some of the products that we're used to using in our programs just no longer be compliant, and they won't be able to change to make them something that will continue to be a K-12 compliant product. So that's just kind of what we're hearing in terms of our contacts with industry members, that some of the products that our students enjoy may not be available anymore.
Thank you, Becky. Is there an example or two specifically that you have?
I know that there are some products like deli meats and such where they're going to struggle with bringing them down to a level that we could use them on a regular basis in our menus. So that would probably be a good example. Does anybody else have something that comes to mind? I know, Katie, you've connected with some industry folks that have noted at conferences that, their products may not be compliant.
I'll just speak to the fact that I know, a handful of manufacturers that are pulling out of the K-12 industry due to those regulations. Like they're just tossing the white flag and saying, I'm done, I'm not making enough money in this, so why go through the hassle?
Well, in Asian.
Thank you. I don't know, Michelle, it looks like Michelle Eggers, would you like to go from Nampa?
Yeah, I guess I agree with what we're having a hard time right now meeting the standard. And there's a lot of.
Oh, yes, definitely. Thanks for that.
Michelle, we can't quite hear you. You're a little muffled.
Am I?
Yeah, we can
Okay.
kind of.
I don't know if I'm. No?
Oh,
Oh,
that's a little better.
Yeah, that sounded a little better.
Okay, sorry about that.
Oh, now you're muffled again.
Okay.
Michelle, would you like to put your comment in the chat, and then maybe in a few minutes and for a future question, we can try to swing back to you and see if that works a little better. And Teresa, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Christy. Yeah, Katie brought up, a really good point, and then I think Michelle was trying to second that. But essentially, at the state agency level, we're hearing a lot of constriction. So almost on a weekly basis, we continue to get notifications from some of the vendors that we participate, where we, buy their further processed products. And over the course of the last month or so, we've seen a reduction of SKU, probably close to 50%, in products that we know are really valuable to our school districts. That's the reason that we participate with those particular vendors. And a lot of what we're hearing is that they not only don't plan to bring those, to reintroduce those SKUs, it's just impossible for them to make them to be student accepted with the restrictions in place, whether it be, the whole grain or the, weighing in for the amount of meat alternate and the sodium combined, so that they're a viable product in the school meals programs.
Thank you, Teresa. And I imagine, Linda, we've got some good comments here in the chat.
We actually have 11. So from Kendra Grove, I believe Moscow, sodium is extremely hard for them to do. Blaine County, Jeff Hale said, we've had success bringing out more flavor with the use of without the use of salt by utilizing vinegar and citric acid to brighten the flavor a bit. Sandra Cornwall from Payette, I agree with Bobby. Most of the whole grain products go into the trash. Low sodium foods are not accepted well. Barbara from Shelley School District, pizza and pizza rippers with the whole grain white wheat have been accepted really well. And Jody Hoff from Lewiston said food industry still has a ways to go to reduce sodium. I agree the further processed chicken products are generally accepted. Lisa Ward with West Jefferson. I agree with Becky and Katie. This is a huge concern for all of us. We cannot have industry dropping out with the K-12 programs. We see this already with some vendors. And Bobby Coleman, Lake Pondere School District, one of our main distributors, will no longer be serving schools in our area after the school year due to product constraints and financial constraints that go with the current guidelines. Val Swanson in CUNA, I've heard that certain manufacturers are reducing their SKU by up to 70%, which reduces choices for students. And then Dawn Stone in Pocatello, what I see is even though there may have been advances, they will not be low enough to meet the next sodium level guidelines. We're losing products. The student acceptance will definitely not be there, even if the sodium can be met. Heather Plain in Bonneville, I agree with the concerns about reduction of SKUs, but also cost is going up tremendously. And Shirley Boyer, cul-de-sac school, and tell me if I need to slow down, but they're just coming and coming here.
Linda, we may moving forward, we might not be able to read all of them, but USDA will be reading everything that you submit, but it's starting to look, which thank you, by the way, because this is exactly what we want, but we just may not have time to like read all of them, but they're so good. They're so good. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, do you want me to continue or stop?
Well, I think maybe what we can do, since we have so many, is we can move on to the next question and we can take some verbal comments on that. And we may just have to kind of skim and read like a few select ones from the chat, but everybody who's submitting, I just want to assure you, we really are reading everything. And so we're going to be taking a look at everything you submit, even though we might not be able to reflect back to you all. How does that sound, Linda? Okay.
That sounds fine, because I'm at 15 new messages now and
okay,
you need to move on.
Right.
And just so you know, everyone knows we can copy the chat. So we will copy that and give it to USDA.
Mm-hmm. Correct. Yep. Thank you, Linda. Okay, we'll move on. And so Jackie is our timekeeper. She's been letting me know that we're going over a little bit. So Jackie, if we could start this one, we'll try to keep this one at 6 minutes or under. But so question 3, you've said a lot of this already. So if you have more to add, but what products are unavailable or currently unacceptable to children in their whole grain rich format? And for this question, I know it's difficult, but we're trying not to focus on the current supply chain issues. So any additional comments here? Let's see. Katie, and Michelle, are your hands up or are they up from last time?
I believe
up.
Katie's
Mine's
is
always
up.
up.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Go
ahead.
I was just gonna note, I haven't had any experience not receiving whole grain products, but I do have to plan for a longer lead time. Especially if I get shorted, we might have to figure something out and substitute here and there. But as far as whole grain goes, I haven't experienced an issue.
Okay. Thank you, Katie. Would anyone else like to unmute and comment on this one?
Yes, I would. This is Carmen Griffith with Joint School District 171 in Orfino. And again, our kids do not accept the whole grain noodles. We've tried the spaghetti, you covered up. That and the other thing we really have a hard time getting the kids to accept is the whole grain pizza crusts.
Thanks, Carmen. And for the spaghettis, the pastas that we've heard, is it kind of just like they don't hold well? They don't over time, they're getting mushy, or what is can you give us more details about that?
The texture and also the taste, the flavoring is different. We actually had to move the rotini noodles and those off the menu because our participation dropped so low that, I mean, it was not worth the effort to see it all go in the garbage. So this year we're going to try the USDA panini noodles and see if we can get that reintroduced somewhat. But it did really impact our menus greatly when all of the noodles went to whole grain.
Thank you for that.
And Christy, I will give you the comments and I will give you a synopsis of
Okay.
all of them. Whole grain rice, pasta, whole grain tortillas, whole grain mac and cheese, pasta tortilla.
Mm. I see the pasta sticky, it's dark. So it's looking different to the texture.
Yeah, pasta tends to be like a paste. Tortillas break and are not soft, but it is pasta, tortillas, and whole grain rice.
Okay. There's one person who said they have had good success with whole grains. I'm curious if that looks like Jody. I don't know, Jody, if you want to unmute or tell us in the chat kind of what you did or what went well. But thank you. Okay.
This is Jody.
Hi, Jody. Thank you.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's just over time the kids have adjusted to the whole grains. I think initially they weren't necessarily as excited about the whole grain pastas and so forth. But, it's been several years now and they just adjust to it. Anymore, they eat pretty much any grains we have available.
Thank you, Jody. Okay.
And one final comment from Val and Cuna is they stopped serving pasta because of transport operations. It does not hold well while transporting.
Okay. Okay. Well, thanks everyone. Those are some, detailed comments about specific products, and that is always very helpful to us. So we'll move on. Jackie, are we doing okay? I think that one we went through pretty quickly. Okay. Question 4 is just trying to kind of get an understanding of what you currently do. So how do you plan your menus to meet the current sodium standards? For example, do you plan meals to meet the same or similar sodium levels every day? Or do you have certain days where you serve higher sodium meals balanced out with lower sodium meals? So this is kind of just giving us some insights about how you do your menu planning. Would anyone like to unmute and share on this one? I see Christy, go ahead.
We definitely want the flexibility of a week. I mean, I think that more fairly replicates how we eat. I think it's unreasonable to expect people to eat low sodium everything they eat. And we really are attacking this issue by eliminating high sodium items. We're just taking these, and they tend to be processed foods. So our plan is to eliminate the processed meats like deli meat, sausage, pepperoni. These things are just coming off our menus. And then we're minimizing the use of condiments. We don't feel like we need condiments on every single thing we offer, and our kids are accepting them just fine. So that's how we're attacking this.
Thank you, Christy. Anyone else? Katie, go ahead.
I was waiting to see if somebody else would raise their hand. I'm just going to note the administrative burden that it takes to plan a menu based on the regulations, especially for the smaller districts. I'm kind of on the brink here. We have about 4,100 students, where I really could have a menu planner, and the bigger districts have a dedicated position to plan their menus, whereas the smaller school districts don't have that luxury. So their director takes up a lot of time just planning and balancing the menu. You'll see in the comments that everybody's trying to balance within the week, and that's truly what we need, but we have to also take into consideration how much time it takes to actually and correctly plan the menu.
Thank you. We really that's a really helpful comment for us to hear about the inputs and the resources available, in order to meet the requirements. So thank you. Anyone else? Did I miss? Oh, Michelle, I think I missed you.
I got another mic.
Oh, we can hear you, Michelle. Great.
Okay. So no, I agree with everybody else. I mean, we're kind of doing the same thing where some days are higher than others on our sodium. But one thing I did want to add is right now we're also having a lot of staffing issues, which is more of the home cooked meals that we would have done before, which tend to be the lower sodium, the more complex recipe items. We're actually having to table a lot of that and do more ready to eat foods. Most of our kitchens right now only have 2 people in them. Out of, that's out of 24 facilities. Almost every facility is operating. We have one school with 4 people in it, and they're doing over 1,000 meals a day. So it's just, I think that's another element to this that needs to be considered, is that right now there's a staffing shortage nationwide.
For sure.
And so that's going to place the burden of having more ready to eat items kind of in people's freezers to serve, which tend to be higher sodium.
Understood. Yes, thank you, Michelle. We have been hearing a lot about the staffing and labor shortage and the discrepancy in wages and all of those things. So that I really appreciate you bringing that up. Let me see here, Lynda, anything we want to highlight from the chat?
No, everybody, it appears, is wanting balanced, and one Cricket and Valley View said our current menu is at level 2 sodium. What we have found is reducing the sodium. We struggle to keep the calories up in the right range. We too are eliminating condiments. So everybody is wants it balanced. It takes so much time. And some of the mid-size or larger districts says it takes them a lot of time as well. And skill level for staff has been a challenge. So they've eliminated homemade items. So that's it in a synopsis.
Really interesting. Yeah, thank you, everybody. I see Shannon, you would like to speak. Go ahead.
Christy, I'm Shannon, West Data School District. You know, I'm going to piggyback off the no condiment thing. What happens when you eliminate condiments, which many of us are going to have to move towards, is those parent phone calls creep up. Because your littles with chicken nuggets, if they don't have their ketchup, mom's not going to be happy. And so on top of trying to plan a menu and feed nutritious food to kids, we're bombarded with phone calls. Currently, West Data feeds about 25 to 30,000 kids a day. And so honestly, not having ketchup is not an option for us. We can't take that influx of phone calls from angry parents. So the sodium guideline, it's just not feasible for what kids are used to, for what families are used to, for what society is used to. And it's going to be, and it has been extremely difficult.
Thank you, Shannon. I appreciate that. I think it's helpful to acknowledge that children have parents, and they're another important, stakeholder in terms of communication and even some of the acceptability issues. So thank you for that. And I see Jackie is letting me know that it's time to move on. So, but I think the next question we have that you'll be able to even elaborate a little bit more for us on or it can be about sodium, or it can be about other dietary specifications. So we know there are multiple ways of approaching school meal nutrition standards for dietary specifications. One example of that being sodium. So per item limits, a weekly limit, or both. And a lot of you have already commented on this, kind of what challenges should we be considering? What are the benefits of these approaches? What suggestions do you have for other approaches? And I just want to mention that, we're mentioning sodium here, but you can also, be thinking about calories, saturated fat, etc. So just wanted to mention that your comments don't have to be specific to sodium. Let me see. I've got a lot of people. Exciting. Okay, so I'm going to start with Becky. Go ahead, Becky.
Great, thank you. I think I could just probably compare this to the issues that we come across with snack compliance. So when you really look at things per item, when you have per item limits, like you cannot have more than X number of grams of sugar per serving, what you end up doing is taking products that really are nutritionally balanced items that are no longer compliant within the system. So we've got some products that are very well accepted, student appreciated products that are not Smart Snack compliant because of their per item limits. So I would just make the comment that having per item limits would be very difficult, and there's a lot more micromanaging that needs to occur to be able to use those types of products in our programs. Thank you.
Thank you, Becky. Let's see. I see Lisa Ward. Go ahead.
Oh, my comment's going to say a little bit about our fresh fruit and vegetable program, which really isn't our lunch program, but taking that into stride. I've been doing that a long time. I just feel like a child's going to eat with most parents are health conscious already. And especially now, more I see in this generation than ever. So I'm saying we need to I feel like we need to concentrate on more of what they're going to eat. I know we need to have standards. I know we need to have guidelines, but we need to make those something that the kids are going to eat, because unfortunately when it goes into the garbage, you have the parents complaining that their kids are not getting full food or full, and the time and the effort that goes into the staff preparing them, especially short staffed right now, is overwhelming. So I really feel like we want the best for our kids, and so if we could maybe have a little bit more allowance to do that, that would be just wonderful, to allow them to have, if they're gonna eat more fresh fruits and vegetables, I think that kind of overweighs the grain, I mean, they need some, yes, I understand that, but I think sometimes we're overlooking what they are gonna eat that is good for them, that's already readily available. We just need to utilize it.
Thank you, Lisa. That's very helpful. I see Heather Plain, go ahead.
One area that we've struggled when we're talking weekly limits is the legume requirement. And so we end up with 2 items, the refried bean and the baked bean that they'll eat. And by the time we credit it and meet that vegetable requirement, we're giving them 3/4 of a cup to meet a 1/2 cup of that legume. And it's just one of those areas we struggle. We've tried dried, we've roasted them, we've done hummus, there's just things, and we throw a lot of it away. And so that weekly requirement for legumes is really tough. And when I serve 5 lines in my high school, and I have to have that on every line every week, that's just one of those requirements that we really struggle with.
Thank you, Heather. Let's see. Looking at the time and how many questions we have. Lynda, is there like 1 or 2 things we want to highlight from the chat? And then I think we've got 3 questions left.
Suggestion from Christy, other approaches. Ideally, we'd like to go back to nutrient-based menu planning for added flexibility in menu planning. Carmen in Orofino School District, we've had students bring their own hot sauce and salt packets, not what we like to see. And a lot of people agree with Christy.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Gosh, we wish we had more time to spend with you, but since we have a few more questions, I think we should move on. But thank you so much. So this is a question about added sugars. So the 2015 and 2020 dietary guidelines for Americans, both editions recommended limiting calories from added sugar to less than 10% of total calories per day. So if there were an added sugar limit in the school meal programs, what do you think it should look like? And I just want to mention here, the question is written in a certain way. If you don't believe that this is something that should be implemented, feel free to share that as well. Lisa, Lisa and Heather, are your hands up from last time, or do you have new comments? No, that's okay. Thank you. And Heather, same. Okay. Would anybody like to share verbally on this one? Mute. Thoughts,
Christy?
reactions to this one? Go ahead.
I'm sorry, this is Sandra Cornwall from Payette.
Hi there.
Hi, as far as the sugar limit, we all try, I'm sure, to make sure our sugar limits are pretty low, but I just feel like adding one more guideline on top of all the guidelines that we're trying to, follow across the board is going to be very difficult. I mean, all of it's very difficult for all of us, but just adding one more would probably be very hard.
Thank you. This was Sandy. Sandy?
Sandra, please.
Sandra.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see, Michelle, go ahead.
Well, it just seems that's already covered kind of with the whole grain dessert guidelines and some of the trans fat guidelines that would already limit things. It seems like we're already very limited anyway on our sugar limits.
Thank you, Michelle. And let me see, Becky.
I can piggyback on both of those 2 comments. Like Michelle said, a lot of the nutrient limits that we have, calories and sodium and saturated fat, as well as the minimum number of meal components that we have, automatically kind of self-polices the amount of anything that we can offer the children. So it's kind of almost, it's already being monitored through those other guidelines that we're following. And then just to kind of go back to, at this point in history and what we're dealing with, and a lot of industry that are kind of teetering on the edge of moving away from offering K-12 product lines, I think adding one more thing to the mix could be very detrimental, if not catastrophic, to us being able to maintain our industry connections for offering products for our customer base. And with, when you add in the additional issue with our staffing, we're really more and more so limited to products that are prepared specifically for K-12. We don't have the staffing to do a lot of scratch cooking. So, one extra thing that's going to limit the K-12 product lines that we have available to us could really be catastrophic. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I see Katie, go ahead.
I just had a quick question kind of for you, like a rebuttal question. And I guess it would clarify everything. What is USDA going for with this standard? So are they trying to target sugars? Is there a food item out there that has added sugars that they're trying to target?
Yeah, Katie, I don't want to, I'm trying to be careful not to bias people too much in their responses, but I mean, essentially, when the dietary guidelines are updated every 5 years, it's an important opportunity for USDA to assess how our nutrition standards for the programs are aligning with the dietary guidelines. And so because of this recommendation of limiting calories from added sugar to less than 10% of the total calories per day, there's sort of a question of how are we doing with our school meals as compared to this particular benchmark. As an example, those of you who may be familiar with the CACFP program, when the new meal standards came for that program several years ago, what they actually do in the CACFP is they have per item limits on total sugar, as an example, for yogurt and breakfast cereals. So there's 2 items that they look at, but they're looking at total sugar in those particular products, and that's the way it's implemented in the CACFP. Just to kind of give you some examples. And I don't know if that answers your question, but I see Lisa and Brenda have responses, and then after that we need to move on to the next question. Go ahead, Lisa. Do you want to go first? Oh, Lisa, you're muted, I think.
There. So I'm piggybacking on what Katie said a little bit. I do agree with, cereal, I can see a little bit of issue there. Yogurt, I think the benefits are so much more than the worries of that. And then my other concern again is that I know I pushed the fruit thing, but our kids love fruit here. We've been doing that program. They love fresh fruit. So we all know that there's, natural sugar that occurs in fruit. So is that going to be something that we're going to have to limit? They love fruit. I hate to see one more thing go away, or be limited.
Thank Lisa. Brenda, go ahead.
Just speaking from a chef and a dietitian perspective, I understand that, we need to watch our sodium, we need to watch sugars, excuse me, but CACFP doesn't have sugar limits. So if we take both of those away, we need something to add flavor back into our meals. So if you take both of those away, the meals are not going to taste good.
Thank you, Brenda. I understand what you're saying. Okay, because we need to move on to the next question, but we appreciate your comments. Feel free, anything we don't hit, we'll see it in the chat. This is more open-ended. So what are the most promising opportunities you see to improve the nutritional quality of school meals and future meal standards? Would anyone like to comment? Christy, is this a new hand?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
We're hopeful that these regulations will move programs and our industry away from processed foods. I think that's ultimately where we have to go to meet these guidelines. We won't have a choice. Unfortunately, the lack of staffing that got brought up, staff training and skill sets, et cetera, are going to continue to push programs towards prepackaged and processed items just out of necessity to operate. I think if we increase reimbursement rates, programs will have more stability, which is what we are all screaming for, especially after these last couple of years, to hire, to purchase quality food items, and ultimately provide healthier menus that we're being pushed towards, which we're in support of, by the way. I think the moves are good. Hopefully the new regulations are not going to move industry towards what I call funny foods. I'm fearful of low sodium bread, low fat, low sodium cheese. I don't want to see our programs move in this direction. I think that would be a failure. Thank you.
Thank you, Christy. And Michelle, go ahead.
I totally agree with what Christy just said. I think our programs are moving towards less processed foods. Again, that goes back to the staffing issues. We did try to move towards less processed foods this year. And then with the staffing levels, we were forced to actually go back out and buy processed items. So I think, you know, I'm basically just copying what Christy said, but I am in total agreement of that.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you. Let's see. Let's try to squeeze in one more of these open-ended if we can, Lynda, but everyone feel free to write more comments in the chat.
Hey, Christy, just
Are we at
one
time?
No, just one comment for last time for you. Somebody mentioned they would like protein at breakfast, and a lot of people agree, and they'd like it not to be counted as a grain, but a protein.
Okay, interesting. Okay. Thank you, Lynda. All right, so this will be our last question, I think, because we're going to be over time, but what else do you think the USDA could do to help pave the way for schools to serve more nutritious meals? Let's see, I see Brenda, would you like to go?
Sure. I think it would be really, really nice to see just the USDA coming out on visits to schools to visit, to be on the front lines. I think just being on the front lines and seeing what everybody is doing and what the kids' reactions are, I think it would be really helpful to do some big case studies.
Thank you, Brenda. Michelle, go ahead.
I would like to see, I guess for me, it's really hard when we're working on our planning and purchasing. We're already working on our purchase orders for next school year. Right now, our bid is complete. And yet we still don't know what our reimbursement rates will be. And so, you know, we are driven by we have a fiduciary responsibility. It would be nice to know what our revenue is going to be so that we can actually anticipate what our spending is going to be, which is, you know, a big portion of that is our menu. So it makes it hard to make those choices, you know, in advance like we need to without having, right now, none of us know what our reimbursement rates are going to be for next year. That's the end of my comment.
Thank you. I lost my unmute button there. Thank you. It looks like, let me see, we have Christy, Heather, and Katie, and then I think we'll have to wrap up with that. So Christy, would you like to go? And then we'll go Heather, Katie.
Thank you. We would love to see universal feeding come back. Maybe it's just universal feeding for lunch would help bolster our programs and meet the nutrition needs of kids. We would like to see increased reimbursement rates, something that's really going to reflect what our true costs are, especially this year. And I agree with Michelle completely. An alignment, get those reimbursement rates to us in January when we're planning, when we're bidding, when we're forecasting, when we're setting our meal prices. We can't commit to expenses when our income is essentially unknown. And then my last comment has to do with alignment of federal program meal patterns and standards. One of the hard things we do is we do CACFP, we do all the programs, and I'm not kidding. It's so hard to retain the meal pattern requirements. And we are incredibly fortunate with 4 registered dietitians planning our menus, and none of us can remember what the heck we're doing. We have to keep revisiting the rules. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Christy. And then Heather and Katie, and I'm way over my time, Lynda. Heather, go ahead.
Okay, I'll be really brief. I went to the School Nutrition Institute conference in Texas earlier this year, and one of the questions from the manufacturers, producers was, where's the incentive to produce for school nutrition? They feel like there's all kinds of things for agriculture and I don't know, for us, but we need them. We need them, especially if these guidelines, I mean, they're going to be here and we need it to be worth their time. So when they win our government contracts, we're expecting them to do center of the plate for 50 cents or 70 cents. And, milk is now 25 and 27 cents a carton. It just doesn't leave much when we are, we're anticipating going back to $2.91. And there's just not enough to cover it. And so that was one of the questions that I thought was interesting was, where's the incentives for them to really be part of it? Because obviously our contracts are not supporting them if they're pulling out at the rate that they are.
Really, yeah, very insightful comment, Heather. Thank you. And last but not least, Katie, if you want to send us off.
Yeah, I'll just talk a little bit more about the administrative burden. And I kind of brought it up in a previous comment. Idaho has over 40% new directors, and that's at the top level. So we have so many schools that aren't familiar with all the regulations and everything, and then we're adding more onto it. So I think we're facing kind of a challenging time where if we keep pushing an administrative burden, are we going to have more directors just walk out and say, this is too much. I can get another job somewhere else that is way easier. And it's scary because what are we going to do? And then you have all these school districts that are non-compliant now. What do we do with that situation? So I'll just leave it at that. And I really wanted to thank you. I think going over time shows how valuable it has been to have USDA here and have this listening session. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Well, you're most welcome. We really want to thank the Idaho State Department of Education for letting us basically take over your call this month. And the input has been so extremely valuable to us. And Melissa and Jackie and I look forward to reading all of the comments in the chat in more detail. And know that when the proposed rule is written in the fall, there will be another opportunity for you all to provide public comment on that. And so we'll be sure to share how you can go about doing that with the state, and they can share that with you. So we really appreciate your engagement, your valuable feedback, all of your hard work and dedication to school meals. We really, really appreciate it. And Lynda, I think we'll sign off. I don't know if you're going to continue your meeting or end it.
I just want to thank you to USDA. and all of the people that attended. It was very well attended. And I want to say thank you for all your comments, because USDA didn't think it would take the whole hour. And that's just a testament to you that you want to make your meal programs better, and better for everybody in the country with all of these comments. So thank you, everybody. And thank you for staying 6 minutes over. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing you at the next webinar, which will be sometime in April. We'll send out a notice. So thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful Wednesday.